Always a pleasure when I get to be joined by Kyle Hightower. He covers just about everything on the Boston sports team for the AP. Kyle, thanks for being with me. Appreciate it. How you doing?
Good, Carolyn. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Just read something that you wrote recently about the Celtics and how they're really firing at the right time with the playoffs looming just a couple weeks away. To what do you credit this second half season turnaround?
I think it's just all kind of coming together. To his credit, new coach Ime Udoka has been steadfast in how he would his approach what he wanted to be for this team. He wanted them to be a team that shared the ball. He wanted to be a team that was focused around Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown, and a team that had patience in letting things come together under the new system. And it's all kind of come together at the right time. There were a few bumps there, obviously, before for the playoff break. People were kind of, including myself, were putting this team saying, not sure where, they had the time or had the, just the cohesion to really make it happen. And they've had a heck of a second round turnaround. Jayson Tatum has really bought in to the new regime and to what they want him to do on the court. He's sharing the ball. He's trusting his teammates. Jaylen Brown has followed suit. The scoring is up. The assists are up. And with the exception of Robert Williams' untimely injury, this team, really hasn't really had a hiccup in the second half, and it's really kind of played itself out with where they are in seeding and where they are heading into the playoffs.
How devastating is this injury to Robert Williams with the playoffs looming?
Oh, it's huge because he was playing so well in the defensive end and really kind of anchoring that side of the ball for the Celtics. A rim protector, a guy who can get out, even on the offensive end, can get out in transition and run the court, give the guards and give the wings an option there to kind of distribute the ball to. And, his injury, it definitely hurts as far as, matchups and having to adjust on the fly, especially this close to the playoffs tipping off. That said, some savvy moves that the new president of basketball operations, Brad Stevens, made in bringing back Daniel Tice, a big man who's had familiarity with the Celtics system in the preseason. Before that, this offseason, bringing back Al Horford, a guy who's again familiar with how things are run in the Celtics, familiar with or more importantly, familiar with the players around him who are still here and in the fold. Gives them kind of a presence where he's not going to miss a beat, especially on the inside and in the interior. And that's huge. Obviously, I don't think this team can win a championship with Daniel Tice there as your primary, guy alongside of Al Horford. But it does give you a stopgap to where it gives Williams some time to heal. The injury wasn't as bad as they initially thought it was going to be. Surgery's already been had. He's just kind of in a process of rehabilitating, getting stronger, getting healthier. And I think this team can get past the first round, talk about like a late second round possible return for Robert Williams, which would be huge, give him a little bit of time to get on his feet, and this team can really pick up and really get to where they want to be.
If he can come back in the second round, for him being so familiar with the system and everything that Udoka has tried to do and especially implement in the second half of the season, is there a reason to think that they might be able to pick up where they left off with this momentum?
There is, just because of just how much of a leap that Tatum and Brown have made. Tatum has always been a great scorer. Now he's a dynamic scorer. Now he's a guy who's seeing the court like he's never seen it before. And again, he's trusting his teammates around him. He's learning that he doesn't have to do everything by himself to create and to get the shots that he needs. He can play off his other teammates. He can let them do some of the work, draw some of the attention, and let him kind of really operate in some of the ways he's kind of cultivating. And as his game has evolved, he's finding new ways to score, new ways to attack the basket. And he's really found a groove. He's playing exactly where you want him to be at this stage of his career. He's still just 23 years old. We keep saying it. Last year it was like he's only 22. The year before that, he's only 21. This guy is only 23 years old. And the way he's seeing the court and play at the all-star level that he is, he's a guy that just is ready to kind of follow. The team is ready to follow and go deep in the playoffs. And he's a guy who's been to the Eastern Conference Finals twice already in his young career. So he's got that experience. He's not going to be intimidated by the moment. And I think this team should the Williams injury, work out, he'd be able to come back and get back on its feet. The Celtics are a team to watch in the East, especially with, Brooklyn, having trouble since Kyrie Irving came back. Obviously, you have the defending champions there, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and in Milwaukee there are a juggernaut. Miami Heat, who played the Celtics well this year, are a great team. But they're right there in the mix. It's going to be interesting to see how this playoff plays out, and especially the Eastern Conference.
It's incredible to think that he's only 23 years old. I mean, I guess you kind of forget that. He's got a maturity about him, Tatum does. And I don't know if it's, his adorable son that we always see running around the court, or just the way that he's developed as a player in such a short period of time. But, when you think about the fact that he is so young, 23 years old, you're really looking at the potential for a transcendent player. I mean, his ability to become a dynamic scorer, as you say, and continue to find ways to get better and mature on the court. Was this the last remaining piece for him, in your opinion, in terms of his development? I mean, does he have more ceiling to reach? He's so talented already, and now he's elevated it to a completely different level.
I think he does. I mean, you're right. I mean, his acceleration to this point has been, I think, even beyond what the Celtics actually envisioned for him. They thought maybe a year or two down the road he'd be at this point. He's already there. As far as just to go, I think it's even higher because, again, having that, that kind of that tag team partner in Brown has been huge for him. He's a guy who he trusts. They came into the league, virtually just a year apart, so virtually together. They've been through the expectations of being young and being talented. They've also seen the fruits of it pay off, both of them being all-stars. Tatum for the third straight season. And they've been around each other in the offseason too. Been around each other through the Olympic system, been around each other working out. And just that comfort level, while there's been a lot of shuffling with the Celtics since they've been in their young careers, the core pieces around them have remained the same. Al Horford's back in the fold. Marcus Smart has always been there since they've been in the league. And then those two, and then you still have, even though Brad Stevens is not coaching, he's still a resource there for him. They're in the front office, and Udoka's a guy who both Tatum and Brown wanted to come in, so they have the coach they wanted if it's not going to be Brad Stevens. So I think the Celtics are doing everything right as far as making them feel comfortable and making Tatum, to your point, feel comfortable on the court. It's been huge.
Yeah, and I imagine it's just it must be a relief at times to share the burden of the learning process with a player like Brown, who's also had the weight of really heavy expectations, and they've been able to kind of do that in lockstep, and that tandem, I think, offers a little bit of relief, especially when you have a young player who's so talented. Was there a turning point for you with a game specifically, a catalyst type game this season, starting with the second half of the season, where you went like, oh yeah, it really started to click sort of right there?
Oh, absolutely. When they lost that, that overtime or that buzzer beating game to the Knicks, they blew a 25-point lead, their biggest lead they had blown this season. And, that was kind of like a down point, for them in the season. And it was a turning point. They're going to go one way. They're going to keep along that same path of being, blowing big leads, not living up to their expectations, or they're going to turn a corner. And, from that point on, this team has been rolling. It's been the mark, of their season. If they go, how far they go in the playoffs, they're going to look back on that moment and say, that's when we became a team. That's when, we decided, which way we're going to go. Look back on that game. A loss of all things is a thing that kind of jumpstarts this team.
It's funny because sometimes moments like that sound cliche in today's professional game, where you think, man, it couldn't possibly be as simple as that in some ways of having a turning point or a moment where a team builds resiliency, because you always think about the business side of things and everybody having their own interests. But, it's really unique to hear your perspective on that situation actually unfolding that way and having them decide in that moment that this is where things are going to turn around, or just have it happen organically. I want to turn to the Patriots really quickly, because I know you're a busy guy. You're covering everybody. Where are we right now with the Patriots? I mean, what are they setting themselves up for next season? I guess is kind of the question everybody has, is like, how high should expectations be for them?
It's funny, Carolyn. We were kind of all kind of lulled into this turn about what we thought about the Patriots after they spent so much money last offseason, bringing in so many free agents. The pocketbook was open, right? Bill Belichick was, just kind of opening up and, throwing money to Matt Judon, threw money to, just several players to bring in new pieces, Hunter Henry, among others. And this season's kind of been the exact turn back to the Patriots we've always known, right? The super conservative, the very super conservative and very circumspect, I guess is the word I'm looking for. Patriots being very judicious of how they do things, who they bring in, the money they spend, and that's back where we're at now. I trace a lot of it back to Dave Ziegler, the former director of player personnel, leaving to join Josh McDaniels in Las Vegas, become their new GM. Yes, Matt Groh, who's the new personnel director, and Elliot Wolf are still in the fold, but it takes time for them to kind of put their own stamp on things. I think that's what we're seeing this offseason in particular. And also, too, to your point, they're gearing up for a big 2023. They're going to have a lot of cap space next season. And in the meantime and in between time, I think they're just going to be the Patriots we've always known, just very circumspect in what they do with their money, bringing in very choice veterans or keeping very choice veterans like your Matt Slaters, your Devin McCourties, those type of guys around it into the fold, James White, but also letting some other ones potentially go. Dante Hightower is a linebacker who hasn't been re-signed. Jamie Collins has been brought back. Kyle Benoit was cut right before free agency began. So they're obviously moving on from them, looking for some younger, stronger, faster pieces there to fill in that spot. They don't have a lot of money to spend, so the draft's where they're going to turn to fill those spots. And in the meantime, I think they're just trying to make this kind of a stopgap season, not too far behind their competition, still be competitive, but not overspend like they did last season as they gear up for 2023.
It's just so fascinating to see, ultimately, I think, how the pandemic has affected all this, because you seem like you got teams going two different ways. You got this blockbuster free agency with teams acquiring quarterbacks and shelling out tons of cash, unprecedented cash. And then, the Patriots would be far from the only team who decided to go ahead and suck it up for 2022 and focus on the salary cap space that they have for 2023. I think about a team like the Atlanta Falcons, who have clearly pushed the reset button and are basically admitting, hey, 2022 is going to be a wash for us. And I wonder how much of the financials of all of this is related to everything that we've seen from the league the last couple of years. I mean, I don't know if you can speak to that or not, but it seems like a fascinating financial trend where you've got, some teams that are basically just going to go ahead and, I don't want to say skip this season, but be really, really conservative with this season in the hopes of maybe starting over. And I wonder if now is just the right time to do that.
Oh yeah, I mean, as much as these these billionaire owners and things like that, losing the millions and millions of dollars they did during the pandemic is nothing small to them. They losing a million here, a million there, it's one thing if you're a billionaire, but losing your tens and your 20s, millions of dollars, that starts to add up over time. And yes, teams want to be competitive. They want to bring in money. They want to bring in fans. Make fans happy. But to your point, yeah, I mean, they're recouping some of that money with the TV deal. They're recouping some of that money with the new gambling money that's coming into throughout the NFL. And bringing in some of the lost revenue. But them, much like the Patriots for that matter, their overall philosophy to these type of things they're kind of taking a page for them and saying, hey, let's pull back. Let's be very judicious of how we spend now. And the big time spending will come back. That we saw a little bit, obviously, this summer, or this off season. But I think that as you say, some teams are taking a wait and see approach, and kind of pulling back and trying to save up as much as possible for the excuse me, for the big spend.
Before I let you go, Kyle, I do want to ask you about the draft. I mean, if they are going to be conservative in terms of what they're trying to do with spending money, what should they be looking for in this draft? What sense do you get of what their approach will be in adding some ancillary pieces, even if they're not, blockbuster pieces?
Yeah, I think they're definitely building, for the future, and I think the draft is where they're going to find some of those future pieces. Some big holes to fill. I mentioned linebacker spot earlier. J.C. Jackson, a name I didn't mention yet, is a guy who they decided to let walk out the door. The leading interception guy last year, got a lot of attention, in free agency. The Patriots, you thought they might make a play for him, might make an offer, and they did, but it just wasn't up to what J.C. Jackson was expecting. And he walked and he went to the Los Angeles Chargers. Big hole to fill back there in their secondary. So quarterback's going to be a huge position to look at. Linebacker, of course, and also a wide receiver. They want Mac Jones to be set up very well as possible for his second season. He needs some targets to throw to. Kendrick Bourne's a guy they brought in last year who made some big headway and made a big splash on his arrival. Jacoby Myers made some progress. They still need a deeper, longer threat to add to that mix. Look at wide receiver. And also the offensive line, same point there. You want to protect Mac Jones. You lost some guys. Like you traded Shaq Mason, your longtime right guard. Teddy Karras, your left guard. He walked through free agency. So look for that to be a spot be filled as well. As far as the names to watch, I think the Southeastern Conference is a place where Bill Belichick goes a lot, obviously with the connection to Alabama. The names I kind of jotted down, look for Andrew Booth, a guy out of Clemson, quarterback who's very athletic. He's on a lot of guys, high on a lot of guys' draft boards. So the Patriots will be on the Patriots too. And Kyer Elam, a guy who's, his father, Abram Elam, played in the NFL. His uncle, Matt Elam, is also a University of Florida alumni, played in the NFL, now in the CFL. So that's another name to watch there too. And also on the offensive line, a local product, Boston College guy, offensive lineman Zion Johnson, a guy who the Patriots seen a lot of, obviously being the proximity to Foxborough. Seen a lot of him play there too. He's a versatile guy. He's played both center and guard, so fill some of the spots that the Patriots are looking to fill there. So it's going to be a busy time. Patriots have a pick in the first 7 rounds, 21st pick overall in the first round. So look for it to be a busy time for the Patriots on the draft board and making a lot of moves.
Yeah. Hey, maybe a receiver is not out of reach. It seems like there's some depth there, maybe compared to some other positions in this year's draft. Kyle Hightower, thank you very much. Appreciate the time as always.
Thanks, Carolyn.